Jesus Christ. Well, Colbert was never really a stand-up, so, I mean, I guess he has that.
No, but I mean...
But he was a comic when the Colbert Report was on. I mean, that was hilarious.
It was really good.
He was great.
Yeah.
He was great. And that show was a great takeoff of a pompous, ridiculous Republican.
Exactly.
I mean, it was really good. And then when you see this, you're like, wait a minute. What are you doing?
Right.
The are you doing?
There's something uniquely tragic about watching a comedian forget how to be funny. It's like watching a magician reveal every trick, not because he wants to teach, but because he's forgotten the magic himself. That's what's happened to Stephen Colbert. Once the sharpest voice in political satire, now just another overpaid moralist performing applause rituals for a studio full of people who already agree with him. The worst part? He doesn't even seem to notice.
Her appearance on Stephen Colbert last night was next level. He's so gross. So gross. I remember the Stephen Colbert who tried to just make us laugh, who is like kind of fun, and who, while we always knew he was leftist, didn't realize he hated the other half of the country so much.
Before we go any further, if you're tired of corporate scripted comedy pretending to be brave, and you prefer unfiltered voices that challenge both sides, now's the perfect time to hit that subscribe button. Because today, we're pulling back the curtain on one of late night's most disappointing transformations. For those who remember the Colbert Report, Stephen was a genius. He parodied right-wing blowhards so perfectly that some people didn't even realize it was satire. He took everything wrong with cable news, distilled it into a character, and used that mirror to hold the powerful accountable with laughter. Fast forward to now, and that mirror's cracked. Colbert isn't holding the powerful accountable anymore. He's holding their hand. His nightly monologues don't punch up, they pare it down. He's gone from mocking the system to becoming its most obedient performer. And worst of all, he delivers it all with the smug smile of someone who thinks he's still doing the Lord's work. And then, in the same week, it happened. Joe Rogan. And Megyn Kelly didn't just criticize him, they vaporized him. Separately, without warning, and without mercy. In just a few brutal sound bites, they did what no late-night critic has managed to do for years. They exposed Colbert as the punchline he's become. Let's start with Rogan. For years, Joe Rogan was dismissed by the media elite as a meathead with a microphone. But while Colbert was busy turning The Late Show into an MSNBC fan fiction segment, Rogan was hosting real conversations, sometimes messy, often unscripted, and always unapproved by corporate handlers. Rogan's strength isn't that he has the answers. It's that he asks the questions. He brings on doctors, scientists, philosophers, comedians, even people he disagrees with, and lets them speak. Meanwhile, Colbert's idea of an interview is bringing on a politician, feeding them a script and giving them a standing ovation for showing up. If Rogan is a campfire discussion, Colbert is a PowerPoint presentation delivered with jazz hands. You want evidence? Colbert once introduced Anthony Fauci with the kind of reverence you'd expect at a royal coronation. He had dancers dressed as syringes. No joke. It was a Broadway-style vaccine promotion number. Sparkles, choreography, nasal swabbing, all done with a straight face. That wasn't comedy. That was a fever dream from someone who watched Rent on mushrooms. And that brings us to Megyn Kelly. Now Megyn, unlike Rogan, comes from the world Colbert is trying to impress. She's been on Fox NBC and now runs her own show. And she doesn't hold back. She's faced off with the Trump machine and the cancel mob. So when she turned her attention to Colbert, it wasn't just criticism, it was demolition, her reaction to his current show. That's not journalism. That's karaoke for Democrats. And she's right. Every night, Colbert trots out the same tired punchlines. Trump bad, Republicans worse, questioning narratives dangerous. That's not bold. That's safe. He's not telling jokes. He's reciting scripture. The crowd eats it up, of course, not because it's funny, but because it tells them what they want to hear. You can almost hear the applause signs buzzing in the background. The laughter isn't spontaneous, it's choreographed. It's rewarded for moral alignment, not comedic timing. Remember when satire meant poking fun at everyone in power? Now, Colbert filters his jokes like airport security. If it's critical of someone left of Susan Collins, it doesn't make it past the gate. And audiences, they're waking up. You can see it on Twitter, Reddit, YouTube. The mockery isn't coming from the far right or the fringes. It's coming from the middle, from people who used to love him. Viewers who once saw Colbert as a truth teller now see him as a court jester who forgot he's not the king. Even his writers seem exhausted. The monologues sound like they were stitched together from 5 trending tweets and a CNN chyron. It's not clever. It's not even commentary. It's political theater with a laugh track. Colbert isn't improvising anymore. He's following a script. A very safe, very approved, very predictable script. But the mask fully slipped when Jon Stewart, yes, that Jon Stewart, came on Colbert's show and tried to make a joke about the lab leak theory. You remember that? Stewart launches into this hilarious, satirical rant about the possibility that the virus may have come from a lab. And Colbert panics. You could see the tension, the awkward smiles, the desperate attempts to pivot. He stepped all over the bit. That was the moment. Right there. When Colbert proved he wasn't a comedian anymore, he was a message manager. Not even Stewart, his mentor, his friend, his predecessor, was allowed to challenge the narrative on his stage. Because that's what it is now, a stage. Not for comedy, but for compliance. When Colbert interviews Kamala Harris, he asks her what her favorite emoji is. When Rogan interviews a scientist, he questions their data. When Megyn Kelly interviews a politician, she digs, she challenges, she pushes back. Colbert claps. That's the difference. One creates dialogue. One seeks truth, the other performs agreement. And somewhere along the way, Colbert forgot what made him great. It wasn't the applause. It wasn't the character. It was the courage to offend both sides. It was the willingness to go off script. It was the humor and truth, not the comfort of narrative. Now, he's just a performer in an ideological play, surrounded by sycophants dancing to the tune of his own fading legacy. And the saddest part? He thinks he's still brave. Now, if you thought the Jon Stewart moment was the most embarrassing chapter in Colbert's spiral, hold on. Because nothing screams satire is dead quite like a dance party with Chuck Schumer and Rachel Maddow. Yes, that happened. No, it wasn't a parody. You can find the footage, Colbert literally giggling and waltzing with Democratic power players like he just got inducted into the cool kids table. It was the kind of thing that used to be a joke on Colbert's old show. Now, it's just another Tuesday night in the late show echo chamber. This isn't just comedy losing its teeth. This is comedy selling its spine. Colbert used to skewer people like Schumer. Now he's doing the cha-cha with them. It's not satire. It's state-sponsored fan service with a jazz band. And it's not just cringe, it's dangerous. Because when comedians become comfortable with power, they stop mocking it. They start mimicking it. And eventually, they protect it. That's exactly what Colbert's become. The mouthpiece of the narrative, dressed in a suit and tie, armed with punchlines that feel more like press releases than comedy. You know who's not afraid to offend? Joe Rogan. The man's had Bernie Sanders and Ben Shapiro in the same studio. He'll argue with guests. He'll change his mind. He'll admit when he's wrong. It's not perfect, but it's real, raw, unsanitized. And Megyn Kelly? She'd rather get booed than be boring. She doesn't check which way the wind's blowing before she speaks. And that's what makes her dangerous. And respected. Colbert? He checks with the DNC, the audience, and maybe a focus group in Brooklyn before delivering anything remotely provocative. Remember that vaccine dance again? Because we really can't forget it. That moment didn't just break the fourth wall, it burned the whole comedy set to the ground. It wasn't funny, it wasn't satire, it was pharmaceutical pageantry on prime time, complete with glitter, sequins, and chorus lines. That wasn't Colbert making fun of government overreach. That was him endorsing it with jazz hands. This isn't just about politics. It's about trust. It's about integrity. When your audience can predict your punchlines based on party affiliation, you're not a comedian. You're a content machine programmed to repeat. And speaking of repetition, Colbert's scripts now run on autopilot. Every night, Trump bad, Republicans evil, Democrats flawed but well-meaning. Don't question the experts. Clap here. Rinse and repeat. You don't even need to watch. You can just assume what he said, and you'll be right 90% of the time. His interviews have become what satire was invented to destroy. Soft, staged, predictable propaganda. He'll never challenge a guest unless they're an easy target. His toughest question in months was about someone's Spotify playlist. Meanwhile, the world is burning. People are losing faith in institutions, and Colbert is playing emotional wallpaper for the politically comfortable. What happened? He used to be the guy who mocked this. Now, he is this. He doesn't question the official story. He narrates it. With musical accompaniment, even his jokes aren't jokes anymore. They're affirmations, phrases designed to make his audience feel smart for agreeing. The punchlines land like pre-written tweets. It's as if his writers major in political science and minor in TikTok. You can feel the smugness radiating off the stage like heat from a malfunctioning espresso machine. And the applause, oh, the applause. It comes not because he said something funny, but because he said something right. It's the sound of agreement masquerading as humor. Trained squirrels could do it for almonds and MSNBC clips. You think I'm exaggerating? He once said, "You are from Northern California, where they grow billionaires in fields." Then followed it up with a game. Let's all name our favorite billionaire. His pick? Oprah. You can't parody this, because this is the parody. Imagine thinking you're edgy while openly bragging about your favorite billionaire. Imagine thinking Satire is having Kamala Harris on your show and asking her what emoji she likes most. Imagine thinking you're challenging power while hugging it on live television. Colbert doesn't punch up, he curtsies. Meanwhile, Rogan's over there having 3-hour debates with vaccine scientists and MMA fighters about gene therapy and censorship. Megyn's challenging everyone from Tucker Carlson to the Biden administration. And Colbert, he's delivering monologues with the emotional depth of a Netflix original about tax reform. Even when Colbert tries to sound smart, it backfires. He talks like Wikipedia had a baby with Reddit, and the baby learned sarcasm before reading comprehension. His jokes are less funny and more functioning as PR statements. He doesn't riff, he recites. There's no spontaneity, no danger, no edge. He's not the guy flipping the table anymore, he's the guy polishing it. Satire used to be about making the powerful uncomfortable. Colbert now exists to make the powerful feel safe. That's why he gets invited to the parties. That's why he dances with politicians. That's why he's never the one asking uncomfortable questions. He's the one making sure no one else does either. And this right here is why Rogan and Kelly's takedown hit so hard. It wasn't just that they criticized him, it's that they exposed him for what he's become. A teleprompter in a suit. A smirk in a script, a sermon dressed as a joke. He used to be a jester. Now he's a priest in the Church of Safe Opinions. Late night was once where comedians punched up. Now it's where they kneel and clap. Not for truth, not for laughs, but for narrative, for likes, for safety, for applause. And in that quiet moment, after the laughter dies down and the band plays him off the stage, you're left with this sinking realization. Stephen Colbert isn't subversive. He's not funny. He's not dangerous. He's just approved. Here's the cruel irony. The man who built his reputation on mocking conformity has become its loudest cheerleader. The guy who once thrived on questioning everything now specializes in questioning nothing. Colbert used to be unpredictable. Now, he's the safest voice in the room because he's not really saying anything. He's repeating it, and that's why his downfall hits harder than most. Because we didn't just lose a comedian. We lost a watchdog, a cultural referee, someone who used to remind us, nightly, that no one should be above ridicule. Now, he delivers comedy like a government memo, censored, polished, and painfully polite. The man who once poked fun at elites now dines with them. He no longer stands apart from power, he shares a dressing room with it. That's not evolution. That's selling out. And the price? His soul. And our trust. When you watch Joe Rogan, you don't always agree with him. And that's the point. He doesn't demand agreement. He invites conflict. He thrives in the gray area where real discussion happens. When you watch Megyn Kelly, you might flinch, you might cheer, but you feel something real. She's flawed, but fearless, sharp, principled, unafraid to cut through noise. When you watch Colbert now, you feel nothing. No challenge, no surprise, just soft, smug validation from a man who once lit up the room with risk and now dims it with routine. That's the tragedy. Because satire is supposed to sting. It's supposed to provoke. It's supposed to offend the comfortable and comfort the offended. And Colbert used to be the best at that. Now he comforts the powerful and offends anyone who dares to think outside the lines. That's not comedy. That's compliance. And the audience? Still clapping. Not because it's funny, but because they've been trained to. They clap when he smirks. They clap when he sighs. They clap when he parrots the day's pre-approved narrative. They clap like Pavlov's dogs, expecting praise for moral alignment. But maybe it's time we stop clapping. Maybe it's time we start questioning the people who used to ask the questions. Maybe it's time we remember that the jester was never supposed to sit at the king's table. He was supposed to remind the king he's naked, because that's what comedy is supposed to be. Raw, honest, uncomfortable. And Stephen Colbert, he's not uncomfortable anymore. And if your comedy doesn't make anyone uncomfortable, it isn't comedy, it's propaganda with a punchline. So if you're tired of the echo chamber, if you're ready to laugh again without feeling like you're sitting through a political campaign commercial, make sure you're subscribed to this channel, because here, we still believe that real satire punches up, not down. And real truth doesn't need applause to be heard. Colbert had it once, but now he's just noise. Smiling, smirking, scripted. A warning, not a weapon. The ghost of a satirist, still performing.